This episode of the Skift podcast features a discussion from a recent online Skift event. To join us and learn more about future Skift events, visit live.skift.com. Welcome back to the second annual Skift Aviation Forum. And now, please welcome the CEO of United Airlines, Scott Kirby, in conversation with Skift Editor-at-Large, Brian Summers.
Hello, Scott Kirby.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well also.
Thanks for doing this. I just want to let you know that I took my first flight on United in about a year and a half over the weekend, and I was on time. So that was what matters.
And service on board as well. Time to get back to the line, though. Yeah,
exactly. So thanks for doing this. I have a broad question to start with you. And I'm sure your team told you that I'm a loyal United flyer in addition to being a journalist. And every time I log into Mileage Plus, it reminds me that I've been a member since 1985 and I was born in 1982.
Oh, wow.
And this is like the most zip that I've seen from United Airlines in those 35 years. Your employees seem to like being there. The product is pretty good. It's a premium airline. And I'm just wondering, in a weird way, is the pandemic like the best thing to ever happen to United Airlines? Did it give you a clean slate to almost start over again as CEO?
Well, I'll never say it was the best thing to happen, given, everything that happened to the whole world during it. But it certainly accelerated our change. And I think we made a decade's worth of progress and things that we were going to try to do and focus on doing, but really made a decade's worth of progress. And I think you hit on the most important point, which is the way it feels when you fly United. Our employees are proud of what we did to get, not just to get through the pandemic, but even taking stands, whether it's sustainability, diversity, vaccines, whatever it is, but starting to lead the industry and not just be a leader in aviation, but a leader in corporate America, creates a sense of pride that shows up in better customer service. Because if our employees are proud of the airline, they want you when you fly to feel the same way. And I've started saying, I have actually the easiest job of anyone at United Airlines because I only have one responsibility: make our employees and our customers proud. And if they're proud, they're going to figure out how to take care of the customers.
So I know you spend a lot of time at conferences and on TV talking about customer service and things like that. But we're all nerds here, right? We want to talk about the network, the places that United Airlines flies and when. A lot of frequent flyers, they know that 4:00 flight or that 7:00 flight is always going to be there. United's always going to fly between these two cities. Have you taken a top-down look at the network and said, maybe we should fly here and not here? Should we change our flight time? Should we improve the connectivity? Like, how has the pandemic changed the network?
I'm also an airline nerd. Well, I'm a nerd in general, but an airline nerd in particular. It took me a long time as I got promoted to stop going through the aircraft flows for every schedule. I used to spend that. I'd take it home on the weekend to do it. It took me a long time to stop doing that. In this case, though, what is great is I now have people that work at United, starting with Andrew DeSella, and then Patrick and Ankit and the people who work for them, who are actually better network planners than I ever was. And so it's great to have, I always thought I was one of the best in the world, but to have the people that are even better than me. One of the other things I've loved of late is Patrick Quayle, who's our senior VP for Alliances and International, has started sending me decks about where we're going and new routes that we're considering or are about to announce. And for the very first time in my entire aviation career, I'm having to go on Google and look up the airport code, which is pretty cool to be flying to places that I don't even know the airport code for.
Those cities, and I assume that you're familiar with the airport code of, say, Amman, Jordan, where you're flying, but some of the other ones that are maybe in the pipeline that you're looking at, are those cities that were always on the United Airlines list of places you might go in the future, or is this purely a pandemic play? You never would have gone there otherwise.
They weren't, is the short answer. And we started markets like Accra, Lagos, Joburg. I mean, well, we knew Joburg would work, but a market like Accra which had our highest load factor, and actually I think was our most profitable across the Atlantic this summer, in a pandemic summer. And what we realized is that there's this huge set of markets like that that uniquely work for United, because we have a hub in Newark and we have a hub in Dulles. And those are the two best launch points for a lot of cities around the globe. And so I never even seen Amman on any of our potential lists. But Amman, and there's a dozen other cities like that that are now on the list to consider, as long as they keep working, that were fully allocated profitable during the pandemic. They're the kinds of places that only United can fly. We've taken to saying, and I think it's true, United really is the flag carrier of the United States. Our fleet of international wide bodies is about the same size as all the other U.S. airlines combined. And because of where our hubs are, Newark, Dulles on the East Coast, San Francisco in particular on the West Coast, there's just a lot of cities around the world that we can serve profitably that our competitors, they've got great domestic hubs. I mean, I envy Dallas or Atlanta as hubs, but they just can't have the kind of global reach that we can have out of our coastal gateways.
So I know you don't like to give a whole lot of information to us on these sorts of things, but in broad terms, can a profitability of Washington, D.C., Accra, or Amman, can that compare to San Francisco, Shanghai, San Francisco, Tokyo during 2018, 2019, or is it kind of a different thing going on?
It can, double digit, we can get to double digit profit margins there. And it was less profitable than our most profitable international flying was historically, though that wouldn't have been San Francisco, Shanghai. But it is solid double digit profit margins. And like everything, I expect it'll be even better on the other side of the pandemic. And what makes it great is it's unique. And because, United is the only airline really in a position to serve mostly Africa, as an example of Africa, the Middle East, India. We're just in a unique position to serve markets like that, and they can be nicely profitable, but they also wind up creating a much more loyal set of customers because, if you're a customer that, India is the perfect example, that travels to and from India, and you want to be able to use frequent flyer miles to go back and visit your family, and you live in the Newark, New Jersey region. You wind up flying United, you're in our frequent flyer program, and you got our Chase credit card, and you take your business trips to the West Coast on United out of Newark, because you're using those miles to get you and your family home to, see family in Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore or wherever. And that's a real advantage for us.
And on the business side, are you starting to see any international business traffic return?
Absolutely. One of the things that this surprised me, actually, our European business bookings are, as on a percentage basis, are higher than domestic already. Immediately when the border opened on November 8th, our business bookings, they're still down, but they are down less than our domestic bookings. And I expect, an even bigger increase as we get into January. I think next year, next summer in particular is going to be the busiest summer for us, at least across the Atlantic. And it's another place where United, the path that we chose to chart through the pandemic, because it's different than others, leads to a different outcome. And we're going to be, historically, United's been the third or fourth largest airline across the Atlantic, and we're going to be by a wide margin, number one across the Atlantic, and serving the kinds of markets that I think there's a whole host of markets flying across the Atlantic that either immediately or over time, United will be the only airline that flies nonstop between the U.S. and those points, just because of where our hubs are, and the fact that we didn't retire wide bodies, means we can pounce on the opportunity when others simply don't have the metal to do it.
I know you're also very bullish right now on London. Just a quick geek question. Did you have to buy any slots in London? How are those trading right now?
So we didn't buy any, but we have used our partnerships around the world to help get slots from partners. And Patrick Quell, who runs our international network, has done an amazing job of going off and finding ways for us to get slots in one of the toughest markets in the country. We have a lot to offer partner airlines. We've got some of our partner airlines that They fly into all of the United Airlines hubs, but they fly from places that are too small for us to fly into, and we connect hundreds, in some cases thousands of customers a day onto their airplanes. And so finding win-wins where we can support their flying into those hubs, and we can take an underutilized slot that used to be flown on a narrow body on a short haul route to Europe or something, and use it to add a flight on a big wide body into the United States, has been a great opportunity for us. The other thing that's really changed at United is we used to try to serve London with a subpar product. When I got here to United, we flew 757s with a not very good product on board the airplane, and now we're flying really our best, if you're a premium customer, the high J 767 with 46 Polaris seats on board. It's just a phenomenally good product, and so we've put a great product in and won market share in that market. And pretty amazing that how big United is today and how different our profit profile is than it was when we used to fly a bad product. It proves, by the way, which I'm sure you, Brian, and the people that you write for will care about, it proves that customers care about quality. At United, there's been this long history of, well, there's not that much demand for premium to London. We can't compete with JFK, so we're going to put a crappy product in there and minimize the losses. By putting a good product in, we get people back on our side of the river flying and do really well. But we had to put the right product in.
So I'm sure that there's some people listening to this thinking, is this the Scott Kirby that I know, the guy that ran an airline with the ticker symbol LCC for a low-cost airline? People thought of you as the U.S. Airways guy, just obsessed with costs at all costs. I always thought that you were playing the hand that you were dealt there, right? And that when you got to United, it required a different strategy. Is that how it worked?
Yeah. So, there's two things I'd say. One, absolutely playing the hand. Maybe there's three. I went playing the hand that I was dealt. When we were at America West, we had no business trying to chase the premium market. It was not going to work. And we also, I think we're smart enough to recognize that in the long term, that business model didn't work. So we went out and essentially acquired U.S. Airways, then essentially acquired American Airlines. By the time we got to American, I at least was trying to change the product, and they've reversed some of those decisions, and I respect that they have a different view. But it's become, the second point I make is, well, I might have thought that, it's not just the hand I've been dealt playing, but I see the results. We'd seen them early at American. I've definitely seen it here at United, that when you create a great product, when you are open, transparent with customers, when you communicate effectively, when the service is good on board, it creates this virtuous cycle. At least at an airline like United, which has our hubs and has our potential and our customer base, it creates a cycle where customers will choose to fly us. It's not a commodity product. We can win based on product quality and service. And I guess the third point I'd make is, I always had a boss before. And, if your boss thinks one thing, there's only so far you can go pushing that envelope without getting fired. And eventually I pushed far enough that happened anyway. But I have definitely evolved as I've seen evidence of how much customer service and product can matter. But as the hand has changed, it's given the chance to really focus on it. And I'm completely convinced now, particularly as we come out of the pandemic, that United Airlines is going to have the best product, hard product, but also the best atmosphere, customer service. Our people are proud at United Airlines. And it's going to be the airline that customers that have a choice are going to want to choose to fly.
All right. I'm not sure that I'm ever going to get a straight answer about this, and maybe it's small ball, but there are people at American Airlines that were in some meetings with you that have told me, no, Scott wanted the TVs off the airplanes, and they've seen you go on TV and say otherwise, that you've always been a TV guy. Can you set the record straight for us? Are you a TV guy or not a TV guy historically?
I am absolutely a TV guy. My stories will go back even further. When I was at America West and JetBlue had just started, and I think it had 12 airplanes at the time, I had negotiated a deal with Live TV to put them on the entire America West fleet, which would have been transformative for Live TV. And because we were 80 or 90 airplanes and JetBlue was 12. I can remember going to the board at America West, and it was a huge deal because it was a couple $100 million investment for us. huge deal for us to do that. Convincing them to say yes, lots of skepticism, but we were going to do it. I called the CEO of Live TV back. He didn't call me, which was weird because this was going to increase, added, order of magnitude increase in the size of his company. Called him back the next day, didn't call me. He called me back 48 hours after our board meeting and said, "I'm really sorry, I didn't call you back. JetBlue found out that you were going to put, America West was going to put live television on the airplanes, and they bought the company to keep it from happening," which was brilliant for JetBlue, by the way, because it was a great thing for them to do. And then in America, we were putting live TVs, we were putting seatback entertainment, all the seats on new deliveries when I was there. I'm told that 2 days after I left was the meeting happened where they decided to not only stop that, but to spend money ripping them off. So they can have their own opinion about whether seatback entertainment makes sense or not. So I'm not debating that at the moment. But there's 100%, without question, I always supported it. And
all right,
American didn't, and they changed the decision after I left.
So, all of you CEOs have these phrases that you like to rely on publicly. And one of your competitors in Atlanta before the pandemic would always talk about the Delta revenue premium, 10% all the time. There was some question about whether that was structural because they had that hub in Atlanta. Can you get to Delta margins and Delta profitability?
I believe we will exceed. We will get to exceed Delta. We've simply at United never realized really our potential. And by the way, if I had to pick one saying as my favorite saying, it would be "no excuses, sir," which I think goes a lot further than saying 10% revenue premium, because what that means is you figure out how to do the right thing, you figure out how to get things done. And to me, that has been, one of the lessons, or at least points of pride at United Airlines, is the leadership role we have taken in the industry. Vaccine requirements, sustainability. I mean, it's not just airline stuff. United has, but it's not just things about the airline. And that philosophy and that approach is sort of fundamental to what we're doing at United. And if you look at where our 7 hubs are, we always had the structural ability, I think, to be the leading margin airline. And by the way, Delta is great, and they do a great job, and I have immense respect for Ed and his team and what they have done and do. I just think we have better raw ingredients. And I think there are 2 airlines that are both going to be really well managed. We're going to compete aggressively with each other. And I think there's room for both of us to do really well. I think we will win. I think that starts because we got a better hand of cards. And if you got a better hand of cards, ultimately that's going to win. They got a head start though. And they've been doing it, and they deserve a lot of respect, but I do think we will ultimately catch and surpass them.
See, I would have thought that your buzz phrase is "it's just math."
I like that one too. My wife bought me a T-shirt finally that says "it's just math." If I'd have known you were going to say that, I'd have worn it today. I haven't broken it out yet.
All right. So along those lines, I want to geek out about something else. Historically, you're a pricing and you're a revenue management person. I had something bizarre happen to me with United these past few weeks because I was flying this past weekend. Flights to this vacation destination that I was going to and coming from were selling out. They were selling out 2-3 weeks in advance. I thought stuff like that never happened. And I'm curious, can your revenue management system, Gemini, predict the demand that's coming in this weird pandemic thing? Or are you guys a little bit behind in trying to figure out who's going to show up and when?
Yeah, it's been hard to predict. I think our team has done a really amazing job. We had Gemini, and I am a geek and understand the math. I'm probably the only airline CEO that understands the math of revenue management systems. And I do, but it solves a number of the fundamental biases and problems that existed in revenue management systems before. It's never had a chance to really prove itself because once we kind of got it up and running, the pandemic hit, and it's completely different now. And for the most part, we're starting to revenue manage more, but a lot of the pandemic, really. Revenue management was almost turned off because it doesn't work if you don't have high demand. But there are some locations, and also the other thing that's happening is demand is shifting really fast. And so, take a leisure destination, for example. if Hawaii all of a sudden the governor says, please don't come to Hawaii, Cabo has a massive spike in demand that a yield management system could have never forecast. And then the governor decides to open up Hawaii. Now there's a big spike in demand to Hawaii, and Cabo goes down. So those are much harder to predict and forecast because the forecasting systems are just based on history, and they're really not good at predicting what a politician is going to do or say. And those kinds of things drive demand at the moment. So I think we are getting back. You look at a time like Thanksgiving or the Christmas holidays, we're able to actually yield manage more in a more traditional way than we did historically. But it's also different now because there's not much business traffic. And so with the lack of business traffic, the pricing difference between a low fare and a higher fare is not nearly as big. And so there's less opportunity for revenue management, has been during the pandemic. I think that'll be different next year, though.
So, I mean, is it still like the worst thing in the world to sell at a flight 2 weeks early, or that old rule doesn't really matter anymore if you're making money on a flight?
The worst thing is to fly an empty airplane. So, selling on a flight 2 weeks early is a high-class problem.
So you alluded to this, Thanksgiving and Christmas, they look pretty good, both commercially and how about operationally?
Yeah, we have a lot of confidence at United. We operationally set ourselves up different than at least a number of our competitors did. We started with the recognition that we couldn't go from 0 to 100 miles per hour overnight. You couldn't snap the system up overnight without breaking something. And so we've been gradual and metered it in. We negotiated a deal with our pilots union to keep everyone in their same seat and their same aircraft and seat. So we haven't had the staffing issues that others have had. And we've managed it much more carefully, I think, than others have. It's been remarkable to me to watch some of the things that have happened in the industry. And, anyway, I'm confident what we have here at United, but we've left ourselves a margin of error. And at an airline, if you don't build in a margin of error, a little bit of ripple in the system, whether it's a weather delay, one afternoon or high winds one day, if you're not careful, it can cascade into a meltdown. And we've maintained the same kind of margin for error that we always had. And I think some of our competitors eliminated their margin for error and their zeal to get back to flying a full schedule.
So I feel like historically one of the problems in the airline business has been the commercial team being siloed from operational team, and nobody asked the other whether they could fulfill the schedule. Is that something that you deal with at United, or is there more communication?
You really are airline geek, Brian, because you hit the nail on the head. 100% of the time when airlines have had an operational meltdown, it is because the commercial team got out over their skis and didn't listen to the operations team. 100% of the time. Every airline, when it has happened, that has been what caused it. I, by the way, did that early in my career once. I was in the commercial team. I got out over the skis, and the airline paid the price. But I learned from it. I'm willing to make a mistake, but I try not to make the same mistake twice. And it's remarkable to me that it's happened not only after one airline did it, that others did it, but that some of them have had it happen more than once. Because it is literally all that has happened. The commercial team and commercial teams at most airlines get a lot more power, a lot more analytical horsepower. And if you let them run wild, they'll run the airline off a cliff.
Great. Thank you. I wanted to shift gears a little bit. Again, you're a very, very smart man. You understand technology better than anyone in the airline industry, I think. But when I ask people about United's investment in Boom, one, and then two, that United is advertising that it's going to fly this supersonic airplane by 2029, the nicest thing people do is shake their heads. And then beyond that, people say it's a paper airplane. It's never going to fly. They don't understand. This is an airline crowd watching. Can you tell us what's going on with Boom? Why you're so sure that this is the real deal?
Well, we have confidence in Boom and believe that we will make the 2029 date. Nothing is guaranteed in life, much less than aviation, but confidence in them. And I think what I'd say to the naysayers is, the naysayers, you never change the world by being a naysayer, by sitting on the sidelines and saying everything is impossible. And we want to change aviation. We want to change the world. And so we're going to try things like boom, vaccine requirements fit into that category. Our sustainability efforts fit into that category, and 100% of what we do isn't going to work, but a lot of it is. I think boom is going to be one that works. Got a great partner there, understand the engineering. It's a long way to go from here to building the airplane, and might the certification process take longer? Perhaps. But the technology is sound. It can be done. It can be built. I think it ultimately will be. Whether it's exactly 2029 or not, I don't know for certain. But we're not going to let the fear of failure cause us to miss opportunities. We're going to pursue opportunities.
All right, thank you. I want to go from a really exciting airplane to a really unexciting airplane. In the past couple of weeks, we've seen United pull out of somewhere about a dozen small cities in the Midwest and the West. Those were served with 50-seat airplanes. Why'd you guys pull out of those markets?
Not enough pilots. I mean, it's simple. We've been talking in aviation about the looming pilot shortage for a long time, and particularly given all the accelerated retirements that happened during COVID, and the fact that most airlines, including us, are growing a lot on the other side. The pilot shortage is now real, and we don't have enough pilots to fly all the airplanes, and so 50-seaters are at the bottom of that pile, and markets that are reliant on 50-seaters are the ones that are going to lose service. It's very simple. It's just a pilot shortage.
Those are old airplanes themselves. You're not looking to replace them, and those cities are going to leave the network if they can't perform?
That's certainly true in the short term. Those cities will leave. It's not really about performance. It's they're not big enough for larger aircraft. And part of our aircraft order is our plan on United Next is to replace about 200 to 300 50-seat regional jets, with mainline equipment. It's not one-for-one replacement. There'll be a trickle effect down on airplanes, but essentially to remove 200 to 300 regional jets while we bring in 500 mainline aircraft. And that process has started. It's going faster because of the pilot shortage, but it was always inevitable.
All right. I'll geek out about another one because I want to ask you questions that you're not getting on CBS News or things like that. You talk about the big
commercial and ops on that. You're the
all right. You talk about the big aircraft order, but years and years ago, more than a decade ago, United placed an order for Airbus A350s. The can keeps getting kicked down the road. Nobody thinks they're actually going to fly those airplanes. Can you answer once and for all, what's going to happen with that order?
I don't know. Is the answer. That's the honest answer. It's a great airplane. I like to say I was a launch customer for the A350 when I was at US Airways back in the day. It's a great airplane, but the 787 is a great airplane also, and we've got a big installed base on those. I think of the 350 most likely as the way we would bring it on as the long-term potential replacement for the 777. Having a large installed base of 777s, 78s, and 350s is just harder to rationalize the incremental fleet complexity. But we get towards the end of the decade and we're going to begin retiring the older 777s, and they need to be replaced with something. And that's the opening. That's the reason that we have kicked the can down the road because that's the right timing to make that decision, and that's how the 350 can work.
Great. Thank you. We're getting an audience question. I think you may be able to see it here. I'm not sure, but I'll ask you. We've gotten the same question twice. So somebody really wants it answered. It's about your partnership with Landline, the bus company. The question is, how is the partnership with Landline going? And do you see growth opportunities with them domestically or internationally? And again, Landline is a bus service that acts sort of like a regional jet, right?
Yeah, it's a luxury bus service. It's a great product. If you fly into Denver and want to go to Breck or up to Fort Collins, it's a great product to go on and try, and I'd encourage you to try it. I've done it. As far as I know, it's going well. I think it's a little early to judge. Obviously the plan is to grow it at least domestically. I don't know of any plans to grow it internationally. But to grow it domestically, and to me, I kind of think of this as how we hopefully can do the partnership for closer in airports, where we're starting to be constrained on the number of flights that can come in and out of airports. In Europe, it's a little different because they have train service. If you get the trains connected to the airport, you can have that kind of intermodal transfer. Our partner Lufthansa's got a lot happening with the rail service in Germany. We don't have that in the United States. And so in a world where we're capacity constrained at airports, in a world where we're pilot constrained to fly 50 seaters, in a world where we're worried about carbon emissions when there's a better option, I'd love to see landline successful because it can tick all those boxes, particularly by being a luxury premium experience for customers. So I think it's too early to conclude it has worked or hasn't worked because we've been during the pandemic when it's been going. But I'm anxious to see it work on the other side.
All right. Thank you. And then I'll ask one more nerd question, and then we will get out of here. You made a big deal out of ending change fees at United Airlines, and all your competitors followed suit. And I'm curious, you talk about it's the right thing to do and customers don't like it, but from a commercial perspective, have you been able to measure any sort of any change in revenue based on this, or is it just too early?
It's way too early, and we've been in the middle of a pandemic. Even in a normal time, I think it's going to be hard to measure. The measure will ultimately be, United Airlines total profitability and how that's comparing to others across the industry and in absolute. Because eliminating change fees isn't just about getting market share for people that don't want to have change fees. To me, the bigger point on it is cultural. And we tell our employees at airlines that we want to do the right things for customers. Then we make them charge change fees. And somebody shows up and says, I just lost a family member. I need to change my flight by a week. And we say, okay, but it's going to cost you $200. And our employees don't believe that we want them to do the right thing for customers because they didn't think that was the right thing for customers. Connection Saver, where we're saving, north of 2,000 connecting customers a day by holding for connections. When we've told our employees their whole career, slam the door in those customers' faces, and then you try to tell them to do the right thing for the customers, they're like, you're full of it. Delay codes, when we have a culture where people sit in conference rooms for 3 or 4 hours fighting and arguing over who gets tagged for the 1 minute delay. These are not just customer policies, they are cultural policies. And so that's harder to measure. I think the measurement will turn out to be, because we're changing that culture and empowering and convincing our employees that we are genuine when they say we want them to do the right thing for the customers. They will do the right thing for the customers. And then we will start to get market share, and we will win customers based on quality. And that will tell in the bottom line, but that's how we're going to win customers.
Do you have any more tricks up your sleeve that you want to share today about what you're going to do for customers going forward?
Yeah, there's tons. You know about the product. I think one of the most exciting things we're doing is communicating more effectively to customers what happens when there's a delay. I'd love to have 0 delays, but if you can see out, well, you probably can't see out my window today. Here in Chicago, I can't see more than about 4 buildings away because of the clouds. That means that the operation, there's just not enough capacity out at the airport at O'Hare. And so it can't run effectively. But telling customers what's going on, being open, honest, transparent, it's just one example. Making it easier to fly. I flew internationally twice in the last 2 weeks, and I flew on 3 different airlines, including one of them being United. And uploading using the Travel Ready Center to put on our app to, get your vaccine information, know that you've checked all the boxes, print your boarding pass before you even leave your house, is so much easier. Making it easy and eliminating stress for customers is one of the things we are focused on doing. Great to have the hard product, great to have the service on board, but eliminating the stress of travel, being open, honest, communicating with customers is another thing that is a real difference maker. And we're just in our infancy. We're not as good as we want. I think we're better than anyone in the world, but we're just getting started on that.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. We're out of time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. I enjoyed it.